What's going on, everybody? I'm Jason with Tennessee Mountain Homestead, and today we're back in the shop. We're going to make some minor adjustments to this here tractor because, as you've probably seen, we got it running. All right, so this thing ran pretty good yesterday, but first impressions and some minor adjustments I need to make before I can drive it some more for testing purposes. Now, the first thing I noticed was it got really hot under this engine compartment, and I've header wrapped the pipes going into the muffler, but the muffler gets pretty hot. It heats up this cowling, this side piece, and it gets pretty hot under here. I drove it around for about 45 minutes yesterday, and it wasn't alarmingly hot or anything like it seemed like it was going to burn up or anything was going to get damaged, but it's hotter than I like it to be. So we're going to wrap the muffler in exhaust header wrap as well. The second thing we're going to do is move this gas pedal. Now, the gas pedal was supposed to be just temporary, and it still may be temporary. However, I realized really quick yesterday that I don't need to use the brake and the clutch very often at all. They're kind of in a tough spot because they're so high up, but I think the way John Deere designed this thing was you put it in gear and then your feet sit up here as you're just cruising through the pasture or whatever. Besides that, I don't really need to use the brake because this thing, you put it in one gear, you select your gear, you take off, and as soon as you let off the gas pedal, it slows down almost like braking on its own. So I don't need to use the brake and the clutch pedal so much. What I'm going to do is I'm going to move this gas pedal forward up in this area, and also it's going to be like this already. It's going to be laid back some more. Because right now that just ain't working. The third thing we're going to do is replace these tie rod ends on the ball joints on the steering, because it's got a lot of slop to it. I was surprised going down the road pretty fast. It doesn't get death wobble, and it doesn't really pull one way or the other, but the steering is sloppy, so we're going to replace these ball joints. All right, guys, it's the next day. My cameramen both had to go to work yesterday and cut grass, so I was by myself. All the stuff I talked about in the last clip, I fixed yesterday. I did the muffler wrap, as you can see here, this black muffler wrap. I just used tie wire to secure it. I attempted to do the tie rod ends. I got one on the left side is done, but the one on the right side, I guess, is a left-hand thread. So and both of the ones I got from eBay were both right-hand threads. I don't know. Anyway, I got one tie rod done. I tightened up the front axle. There's a big castle nut that adjusts how much the axle can move side to side, and it rubs on a piece of steel under there so that it can't flex back and forth while you're driving. Well, it was super sloppy. I tightened up that castle nut to the point where there's no play in the axle. I greased the wheel bearings. I also fixed the gas pedal better than it was. If you notice here, I cut it, bent it back, and welded it, so that way before it was upright like this, and I couldn't even get my foot on it. I put a stronger spring on it, and now it's much more comfortable to drive this thing. Besides that, I had another major issue yesterday. So this thing's got a fuel pump, as we talked about earlier, and I think the fuel pump is overriding the needle and seat in the carburetor. Now, it says it's meant for a fuel pump, and I think it might be meant for like a bypass and a return to the tank, but this fuel pump I think is just too much for that carburetor, and I don't know what the PSI on this pump is. Anyway, it's a decent sized fuel pump. So what happened was I was driving this thing around yesterday after I did all these other repairs, and up and down the road, it started breaking up. It started running a little bit, not so good, not so smooth. And then I seen flames coming out of the exhaust. And not just like intermittent, not when I was revving it up, like literally it was like a torch, just continuously coming out. So I think that was my issue. I don't know. Hopefully nothing's broken inside the carburetor. But I got this inline fuel valve, and I'm gonna put it in right here. And it's going to hopefully restrict most of that fuel. And my other cameraman's outside weed eating now. That's nice of him. Anyways, guys, I'm gonna cut this in. We're gonna do some more testing. We're gonna put some more footage of this thing driving around if it's good. If not, I gotta figure out the carburetor. Anyways, we'll be back in a minute. Well, I put that valve between the carburetor and the fuel pump. I tried turning it way down to where it could barely flow any fuel through it, and then it ran all right, I guess. It still spit flames out of the exhaust, which I'll show you. I got a clip of that happening. And then this happened. Fuel pump quit working. I tested voltage at the pump, I checked the fuse. Everything's fine. The fuel pump's no good now. I guess I burned it up by putting that restriction on it. Fuel pump sits right there behind the transmission up on that back plate. Well, guys, that's going to be a wrap for today's video. It didn't go as great as I'd hoped it would. I mean, it ran good, it runs good. I don't know what the deal is with that whole thing where I get going down the road, you know, at a steady higher RPM, and it starts blowing flames out of the exhaust. I don't know if the fuel pump's overrunning the carburetor. I don't know if it's too rich in general. It doesn't seem like it. It runs pretty good if you're just feathering the pedal and throttling it in and out of the throttle. It seems to have some pretty good response. But in the end, I think it was my fault. I burned up that cheap eBay fuel pump with that valve. I didn't think that would happen. I don't know, guys. If anybody has any kind of insight, I've looked online. I've tried to figure out, you know, what kind of a setup it's supposed to be when you run a fuel pump with a small engine like this. If there needs to be a return line and a T at the carburetor, so it just takes in what there's like 0 PSI, but there's fuel available. I've thought about it. I've looked. I've scoured the internet for a couple hours here and there. I don't know. I don't want to burn this thing up. I don't want to ruin it. I need to figure it out. So if anybody can give me some advice, I'd appreciate it. Please like and comment. Anyways, guys, once again, my name's Jason, Tennessee Mountain Homestead, and I'll see you next time.